Detroit Unity Temple. Ellis Liddell is the president, chairman, and CEO of L Wealth Management LLC. And of course, Attorney Tracy Martin, who is a regular commentator on this program here at the Roundtable. The first segment of this program got so interesting that I decided to push this to the other side of the discourse. We're talking about Black history. We started with, the crisis facing Black male, but we pivoted quickly to this question of culture and identity. And before we went to the break, I gave the example of, having gone to being invited by friends in the Jewish community to attend Jewish Seder dinners. And I remember this particular Jewish Seder dinner, sitting across, and I watched this young people offering prayer in Hebrew and rattling off Hebrew terminologies. And I was watching them. It was as if I was watching some Hebrew priest engaging in incantation. And it was so admirable. But then that was a moment that dawned on me that, in fact, in the Jewish community, their identity culture is wedded to their everyday life. It spreads into their business and all of that. And of course, and I say that to underscore the conversation we're having here in terms of the importance of culture and identity.
Right. You have to identify yourself with something.
Right.
And what you identify with oftentimes determine how high you can ride.
Right. Right.
And if you identify with the drug culture only, then you're probably going to get busted one day, right?
Right.
But if you're identifying with living in Farmington Hills in a nice house and being able to go to the mall and shop and generating the income you need to take care of your family and send them to the schools that you want to send them to, and you're probably going to, if you focus on that, you're probably going to get that. I mean, I'm a huge prosperity believer. That's why Unity works for me.
Right.
Because I believe that you do have the ability to change some things, but you do it to feed that spirit. And that's the spirit of growth and development and helping others.
One of the things that I appreciate about Dr. Naim Akbar is he related to something that we tried to get started in the 90s that came across from our heritage was rites of passage. Right. And we tried to build rites of passage. And we tried to bring that into our culture and our community. Kwanzaa was one of the things we tried to implement as a ongoing effort. I think Kwanzaa has been something that has been established now by Wally Murai Karenga, that has established itself as a ritual within our community that we celebrate on a regular, ongoing basis. For those families that have taken it in as a regular, ongoing effort, has seemed to establish itself as a ritual. And for those families that celebrate Kwanzaa, it has now become a regular part of our holiday season. And that's something that has been taken on as a regular effort. And we do need to continuously establish those grounding rituals that lifts us up. But we have to look now at rites of passage. We got away from it. But if you remember in the 90s, there were certain churches that took groups of young men over to Africa to be a part of a rites of passage effort. I remember Hartford took a group of young men over to Africa to be a part of that. Another program had rites of passage involvement for young men and young ladies. But somewhere in that effort to have rites of passage for young men is very important and for young ladies. And we have to find a way to build that bridge because we can't lose. You brought up the Jewish community. Their bar mitzvah and their program of that rites of passage for them is very important.
Right.
It's critical. And that junior high school age, that middle school age, from that passage from teenagers going into manhood or womanhood, is critical. Because if our young men don't know what it means to move into manhood, and Dr. Naim Akbar talks strongly about that if there's no symbol, there's no training, there's no discussion, and in our family, there's no taking and embracing them. In the Native American culture, in the African culture.
It's interesting you said. I'm gonna give a quick example, and I'll bring Tracy in here. So I'll talk about this later anyway. But so I was at Temple Bethel, is the oldest Jewish congregation in Michigan, and so the chief rabbi there, Daniel Syme, was retiring about 2 years ago. He had invited me to speak at the temple 4 years ago, and at his retirement, I went to his retirement. It was a big celebration at the temple. But this was what struck me. In fact, I later wrote to him explaining how that was significant. The keynote address at his send-off at the temple was virtually, basically given by a 10-year-old boy called Noah.
Yes.
And Noah, everybody in the temple was sitting in there at Temple Bethel in Bluefield Hills. Everybody at that temple, there was not one dry eye in the room when Noah was speaking. And you know the title of Noah's message?
What was it?
That Rabbi Simon is my superhero.
Wow. Okay.
And here was somebody who has been called one of the leading rabbis in North America, one of the, celebrated rabbis and all of that stuff. You had all these high profile people at the temple. You have federal judges. You had everybody in there. And a 10-year-old Noah
Gave the
basically,
That's impressive.
and not only that, this was what shocked me. He invited Noah to sit up with him on the altar,
right.
sit next to him. So if we transfer that to our community, I wonder how many of us, given how much we have become successful, right, and highly successful, and we're retiring, will have a 9 or 10-year-old give the address and sit next to us on the high table.
But that's
That's so impressive.
right.
And Pastor Guys, Reverend Guys, I see, unfortunately, in my work and my practice at Wayne County Juvenile Court, the downside when the children, particularly Black males and other males of color, don't have those strong family connections. They don't have that strong family support. And unfortunately, it results in contact with the juvenile court system.
Right.
So it's very important. Oftentimes I see families that have a mom, they have the grandmother, they have the other children, but unfortunately the father might not be present. And I believe that in particular for young males who are tweens or teens, a father is very important. So if the father isn't present, it's important for a father figure.
Yes.
I mean, there's opportunities for surrogate fathers. And I think that's where the church comes into play, and community connectivity, if you will. That old saying about it takes a village. I really do believe that. And so, one thing that I really appreciated about your service this past Sunday, Father, was the diversity. We had Attorney Morris Dees there speaking. And by the way, I'm really enjoying a copy of his book, A Lawyer's Journey, that I received at the Maud Hall at the Temple, Detroit Unity Temple. But I was really impressed with the rabbi that was there. I believe it was Rabbi Dorit Edu.
Yes.
And she gave us the Lord's Prayer in Aramaic.
Right.
And I was very impressed with that. And I just felt the positive energy in that temple. And I tell you, I'm really looking forward to hearing Dr. Naim Akbar speak on Sunday. I'm looking for some inspiration because, in my work, it's very emotional. And, I fight for people. I fight for families. My goal is always to reunify the families and to bring the children back home. I always, what they call a disposition, if a youth has been found responsible for a particular offense, is to have a place in the community and to get mentorship. And I just